Well, Vandy didn't have a game this weekend, but we sure did learn a lot this weekend. Bama comes in as 24.5-point favorites. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, as Vandy enjoyed a bye week, all eyes were on the upcoming opponents, and this team, well, we learned a lot from this weekend. Kentucky's defense is for real as they pulled off a massive upset of Ole Miss, and Bama looked impressive as well. They look like, indeed, the number one team in the country as they dismantled and held off an upset bid or held off a comeback bid from Georgia. So how does Vandy match up against them? Well, we know Bama's going to open up as 24.5-point favorites when they visit Nashville. So let's get started with the Tide, man. And like I said, they looked every bit like the number one team in the country last night. And they were impressive. So they start out, they rolled Georgia in the first half, and then Georgia came roaring back, took the lead, and then Bama took it right back and held off their almost near miraculous comeback. So, again, like I said, they open up as 24.5-point road favorites when they come to town. So this Vandy team is going to have their hands full, especially with this Bama team as the way they're playing right now. And the first order of business is getting pressure on Milroe and containing Ryan Williams, which is seems like an impossible feat. Georgia made it look really difficult. South Florida was able to do a little bit against Bama. They were able to frustrate them a little bit. But, man, this team is, like I said, man, this team is impressive. But it's the SEC, so there's always a chance, albeit very slim, but there's always a chance. So let's talk about Milroe, okay? He's an absolute weapon. And this is what you have to do, okay? For Milroe, for a guy like Milroe, what Georgia failed to do, especially in the first half, they did a better job of it in the second half, but still it wasn't all the way done. But for Jalen Milroe, he is such a running threat that you have to contain the edges because he will run. He will break contain, and he will chew up yardage in a heartbeat. So they had some option game going against Georgia, and they had no edge. They could not solidify the edge. They could not tackle Milroe. And when they did get pressure on him, they couldn't bring him down. And he was able to knife through the center of the defense and pick up first down yardage. Like there was a play, especially in the first half, where Bama had just gotten a massive penalty. It was 1st and 20. They're backed up deep in their own territory, like inside the 10 coming out. And Georgia about had a sack on Milroe, and he just tucks it and takes it 25 yards for the first down, move the chains. They go on to score on that drive. But, man, it's, for Vandy, they have to rush aggressively, but they also have to maintain their lanes. They have to contain on the edge, and they have to make sure that they can get Milroe running sideways, which is just as dangerous, to be honest with you. But they have a better chance if they can get him running sideways instead of north and south, because once he gets going, he is tough to stop. But that's him as a runner. Okay. That's him as a runner. So in order to contain him as a runner and a quarterback both, they have to collapse the pocket on him. They have to constrict it and really make things tight, really make him just kind of pinball around back there in the backfield and not let him slide around and find a crease and explode through it. Because once he does that, you're in trouble. But for that, you have to force him to throw from a congested pocket. You have to get hits on him. You have to hurry him. You have to muck up his reads. And if you can do that, you have a chance. Okay. South Florida did a good job of that. I'm going to go back and watch that game more closely as I progress through the week, because there's some secrets in there that South Florida did to kind of frustrate this Alabama offense, which, holy cow, dude, like watching them play against Georgia, watching them play against South Florida are two completely different ball clubs. But that's containing Milroe as a runner. Okay. Constrict the pocket, limit his ability to get north and south, and impede him as much as you can, and force him to run sideways and force him into some throws he don't want to make. But there's many layers to this Bama offense that you have to contain, and you can't key in on Miller, you can't key in on Haynes, you can't key in on Ryan Williams, the 17-year-old, the sensational 17-year-old, because any one of those, if you double Ryan Williams, well, you got Milroe running free. If you if you pack the box to stop Haynes and Milroe in the run game, well, you got one-on-one matchups with Ryan Williams, and he's shown that his shiftiness, his speed, his explosiveness, his ability to play the ball in the air will get you every single time. So what you have to do containing Ryan Williams, you give him a little cushion, frustrate him, and hope that, your pressure can get to Milroe. You have to play through the ball. You can't, you have to stay on him. You have to get contact with them. You have to jam him a little bit. If you try to play press, he's probably going to burn you, but you got to do whatever you can to kind of frustrate him, hold him, knock him around, do whatever you got to do, get inside of his head, okay? Because he is 17 years old. That's an advantage that you have. And a 17-year-old playing in the SEC leaves you some chance for a little bit of immaturity and not, and he's shown that he's pretty mature, but there are chances, because he is 17 years old, that there are some chances that you can frustrate him and kind of get him out of his element a little bit if you can get shots on him, knock him around. And then once he makes a catch, you have to be able to break down and tackle him. It doesn't matter if you hit stick him. It doesn't matter. Just get him to the ground. Georgia showed that if you can't get him to the ground, he can make things happen. So for Ryan Williams, you just have to frustrate him, man. Just get him in a situation to where he may not be getting as many targets, and he might get frustrated with that a little bit. You jam him up a little bit, shove him around, make life difficult for him, because he's only 170 pounds. So you do have a chance to kind of knock him around a little bit before the ball gets in the air. And any chance you get to do that, you can use that to your advantage. And that's how guys kind of play those top receivers. They almost do like a box and one type defense where, hey, you are going to play man on him. We'll help you out bracketing, but we're going to play some combo coverages. It's going to put our best coverage guy on their best receiver. And it's shadow time, but there's a lot of different strategies, and I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to lay out everything that Vanderbilt can possibly do over the course of this week to give themselves a chance to beat Bama at home. Okay. And like I said, they're 24.5-point dogs. So anything they can do aggressively, any chance they can take or anything that they can do defensively to kind of slow them down a little bit, to kind of frustrate them a little bit, would be key. All right. The run game, again, circling back to that, but adding Justice Haynes and Jam Miller into that. Jam Miller's a great pass catching back. He had a touchdown against Georgia in a wheel route out of the backfield. So he's dangerous as a runner and a pass catcher. But for this run game, you just have to kind of clog things up a little bit. And Vandy did a good job of that for the most part against Missouri. When Missouri tried to run their outside zone stretch plays, they kind of muddied things up a little bit and were able to clog things up and force them to run sideways. It was the stuff right up the middle of the defense that they struggle with. But I think a lot of that was because they put all their eggs into stopping the stretch that Missouri was able to counter with that inside zone and those ISOs, and were able to do some damage there. But for that, you have to solidify the edge. You have to kind of have a similar game plan, because Milroe will pull that thing and go if he sees that there's nobody on the edge present. So you have to clog up the middle. You have to, I mean, the thing that Bama forces you to do with all these weapons is they force you to win one-on-one battles, which they have superior talent. Unfortunately for Vandy, they have superior talent. So they force you really into winning these one-on-one battles. And if you can win some one-on-one battles, you give yourself a chance. If you can win a one-on-one battle against a receiver like Ryan Williams, you give yourself a chance. If you can win a one-on-one battle and tackle Milroe in space before he gets going, you give yourself a chance. If you can clog some run lanes on the edge, they can't get outside. That gives yourself a little bit of a chance. If you can win, if Seabrooks can win one-on-one on the inside, clog up the middle of that defense, and force those backs to have to stop their momentum, you give yourself a chance. And that's all Vandy can ask for in this game. This was one of those games when the schedule came out that it didn't matter how good we were playing, doesn't matter. Bama, this was always going to be this way. This was always going to be let's see if we can go out and give Bama the most frustrating experience we can, and see if we can compete. And I think we're capable. We're certainly capable. We just got to do it. But you got to get Diego Pavia going. We'll talk about the offense here next. All right, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you speaking of FanDuel, if you bet Derrick Henry to get 2+ touchdowns tonight, you probably cashed in pretty well in the first half, because he is having himself a game against Buffalo. But hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Let me read that again in case you didn't hear me. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. Okay, that's $200 to play with when you make your first $5 bet. So you get $5 to make an additional $200 in bets. It's pretty dang good, and that's on FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. All right. Welcome back. It's the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. I appreciate you every day, as you guys are the best. You guys are so awesome, man. You make this thing go. It's a big week this week, guys. So get in on the action. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Vandy's going to need all the help they can get from the crowd this weekend, because Bama rolls in likely as the #1 team in the country. And this is going to be a fun atmosphere if you can make it not a road atmosphere. So I think that'll be good. But make sure you make Locked On SEC your next listen after this. And, of course, go and subscribe to Locked On College Football. It's a crazy season. It's an absolutely crazy season, and I'm here for it. So this has been a fun season so far, and since the 12-team playoff, all this NIL stuff, I think the parity is at an all-time high, which I freaking love. So this is awesome. But anyway, talking about Alabama, they looked impressive against Georgia, right? They, in the first half, they did everything right. And, of course, the stories on Milroe and Ryan Williams and their connection and how they kind of took over the game. But let's look at the defense a little bit, okay? Now, there's some highs, there's some lows for this defense, okay? There's some things that Vandy can possibly exploit to make this an experience where Bama's a little bit on their heels. And what Carson Beck was able to do this weekend kind of showed you. And like I said earlier in the show, I'm going to go back and watch, because I didn't watch the South Florida game when it was live. So I might go back and check it out and just kind of see what they were able to do play to play when they were able to frustrate Alabama and almost win. I don't know what it is about South Florida. They have their number, but Bama's defense versus Vandy's offense. This is going to be kind of intriguing, because it was kind of a strange thing. Like in the first half, Bama's defense could do no wrong. Their DBs were blanketing Georgia's receivers. They were getting after Carson Beck. They were hitting him, knocking him around. Georgia couldn't run very much. Georgia couldn't get much of anything going. That stadium atmosphere was electric. I mean, there was just everything on the table for Bama. They were flying around. They were tackling well. They were defending passes well. You couldn't do it. Georgia couldn't do a dang thing in that first half against Alabama. Then all of a sudden, the juice kind of wore down a little bit, and Georgia's able to run a little bit, and then they were able to take shots. They were able to hit intermediate to deep shots on Alabama, which I was kind of puzzled by that, because usually it's not like that. Like, usually when you start launching deep shots, it's desperation, and the game usually turns from like, hey, we have a chance to, okay, let's just keep this thing under 100. But for Bama's defense, they kind of got a little confused and a little discombobulated. Like, their DBs are young, their corners are freshmen, their safeties are pretty dang good, but I think that's where a lot of passes were defended in the middle of the field, and Georgia couldn't get much across the middle. But when they took shots along the sidelines and then out wide, and then some of the crossing routes where safeties were kind of running all about, Georgia was able to complete some passes and get some things and move the ball a little bit and a lot better in the second half. So when you look at how Bama's defense was playing, Georgia was able to use the run game a little bit to set up what they did down the field. Now, Georgia's run game, I guess, was supposed to be their identity. I wasn't really sure what their identity was or what they were trying to do. But so how that relates to Vandy, okay? So what Vandy has they have an obvious identity here, right? We like to run the option, right? We're a heavy run team. Pavia is an absolute dog. The running backs are, Newberry and Alexander are great 1-2 punch. And I think Vandy, if they want to have a chance, they've got to be able to get those guys going a little bit, enough to kind of make Bama stretch a little bit, make them defend and be able to open up some shot plays. I think against Missouri, we were able to get some things going in the run game that loosened that defense up a little bit. And I think for Alabama, and I think what I'm going to see with South Florida when I watch that game is that South Florida was able to do something similar, where they were able to find ways to loosen up Bama's defense, which put their offense on their heels as well, and was it what made USF be able to kind of move the ball down the field a little bit and get some chunk plays and get some things going offensively. Now, Vandy has found a couple of things offensively. Joseph McVay, for one, they've got to get Wiley going. They've got to get some other receivers going. Skinner. They've got to get Big Q going, and I think they're going to have a chance deep down the sidelines, and then on that first window dig and some of the slants and things like that I was able to see Georgia get, and some other teams be able to get on Bama as they were able to complete some passes. And it's just one of those things where if you want to beat Bama, if you want a chance, you have to take those shots, because those freshmen just aren't quite there yet as far as defending the ball in the air. Now, I will say this. The freshman that picked off the ball to seal the game, he played that perfectly, because Carson Beck was underthrowing all night long, and he just sat under that route and said, hey, I'm going to give you the back pylon because I know Carson Beck is not going to throw it there. He's been short all night. I'm banking on the fact that he's going to be short right now. He took a big risk, but he was right. He played that ball perfectly. So these guys are smart. They're well coached, but their instincts aren't quite there yet. They have trouble finding the ball in the air. So on some of these deep shots, Vandy has a shot at hitting some of these, because these DBs really, these corners especially, really get turned around a little bit, really kind of have trouble finding and locating the ball a lot of times when it's in the air. And there's some pass interferences both ways that should have been called in that game. But like, there's some chances here in the deep throw game that Vandy has. And so Diego Pavia, he needs to warm up that arm. He needs to loosen that arm up a little bit, get those throws ready and get those throws on point. But I think the key to all this is going to be able to be stretching their defense 53.5 yards wide and pushing the ball vertically down the field and trying to stay out of the middle when they push it deep because those safeties are good. They'll come and pick off passes. Those linebackers are athletic. They can jump up and grab one. So try to stay out of the second and third dig windows across the middle of the field deep if you can. If you're going to hit something across the middle, it's got to be short, like on a crossing route or like a second window slant or whatever the case may be in that regard. But you've got to be accurate. You've got to be on time against this Bama defense if you want to have a chance at all, because this team flies around. This team makes plays. This team is smart, and they understand, and they can take away what you're trying to do. Now you've got to understand, okay, these analysts in the building, in the McGugin Center, they've got to do a hell of a job self-scouting this weekend. All right. And this week they've got to really dive into, okay, what are the things we need to take away from Vandy? Okay. What are the things like if I was coaching against this defense, this offense, what is the main things I would try to take away? You got to understand that Bama's going to come in looking to do that. And you've got to counter that. And if you can counter that, you're going to be in good shape, right? You're going to be in a good position to really make some plays because they're going to overplay some of these option things. And you still got to do those things to kind of keep them honest, but you've got to have good counter games off of that stuff. You've got to have shot plays that you're willing to take. You're 24.5 point underdogs. Let's be honest. Take the shots. Go for it on fourth down. Play with tempo. Try to get them on their heels. And if you can get them on your heels, you'll have a chance to frustrate them. If all you need is a chance. We proved that against Missouri. All you need is a chance. And they almost pulled it off. Should have pulled it off. There was a couple things that went wrong where they didn't. But all you need is a chance. And that's some things that they can do. But there's going to be way more Bama talk this week. I'll dive into a lot of different things, a lot of different avenues throughout the course of the week as we approach this game on Saturday. But we're going to the other opponent, Kentucky, I want to talk about them a little bit because they looked impressive against Ole Miss. Gonna kind of give you set the table for that game in the future as well. But we'll talk about them just here in just a second. All right, this episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has new features called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff only to show you the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Well, here's the thing. There's some great deals out there. There's some amazing deals. The Titans game next week after Monday Night Football. It's going to be there's going to be some really good prices. If you're in the Miami area, hell, just pull up Game Time. If you're a Titans fan traveling, you can get probably some pretty good deals at Hard Rock Stadium. But Game Time Picks, that curation makes it easier, man. You can save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, all that stuff, man. And what I really love is what I made sure I toggled this feature on because you have to do that. If you don't, it won't show you. But it's called all-in pricing, so it shows you the total up front. There's no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you get, and you can't beat that, man. And also the seat views, man. If you want to get if you want a ticketing app that gives you a panoramic view from your seat before you buy the ticket, dude, Game Time is the right place. And they have the lowest price guarantee, or they will credit you, Game Time, that is, will credit you 110% of the difference. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, we are wrapping up the show here. It's the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your first listen. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you make Locked On SEC your next listen this week. And this is an amazing channel. This is an amazing network. So I appreciate each and every person in this network, especially the SEC family. Don't know where Vandy fits in at the table, but hell, I'm here. Let's get it, man. But talked about Bama. Bama looked impressive. They looked impressive. They looked like they're fitting. They're kind of settling into the Kalen DeBoer era quite nicely. So, but also look impressive, and it's also Vandy's next matchup. It's Kentucky. Now, I want to set the table because this is a huge win, and I feel like I need to talk about it while it's still fresh. And then, of course, obviously, we'll kind of rehash what really went right in this game, but just kind of give you an overview of kind of what Kentucky brings to the table, just to kind of set the table there for, because, everybody's like, well, Bama's going to win. Everybody's kind of, grumbling about Bama, but maybe there is a little bit of excitement on the way, on the horizon against Kentucky, because even though they looked impressive, there's still some things about Kentucky that you can beat them, right? And they were impressive. What they were able to do against Ole Miss is they were able to frustrate Jackson Dart. They were able to force him to make throws early. They were able to flush him. They were able to frustrate him, get hits on him. They were able to defend the run game and really kind of stifle that. And just that defensive front, man, is ridiculous. They're good, right? But what, Ole Miss's identity, I think, and then what Georgia was trying to do a couple weeks ago against Kentucky. So Kentucky's last two games, Georgia and Ole Miss, before Ohio. So it was Georgia, Ohio, and then Ole Miss. But their last two conference games, Georgia and Ole Miss, I think we're trying to play similar styles of football against Kentucky. They were trying to push the ball down the field vertically. They were trying, they're more pass-oriented, RPO-oriented, like trying to do some fancy things in the pass game. And I think Kentucky, what they're able to do is they're able to frustrate you because they can get pressure, they can push the pocket, they can get penetration, they're aggressive, they tackle well in space, all of that stuff. So they're able to frustrate you in that regard. And Georgia couldn't get much of a run game going, neither really could Ole Miss. And that became a burden actually on those offenses because they weren't able to quiet down that rush. They weren't able to stop those guys from pinning their ears back and just shooting gaps. And here we go. We're gonna invade you and really knock you out. What Vanderbilt actually presents for this Kentucky defense is a lot different, right? Because Ole Miss, not a ton in the run game. They're good. Don't get me wrong. They were number 5 in the country for a reason because they're extremely explosive. But they're not known for their run game. And even Steve would admit that. It is Jackson Dart. They are Trey Harris, Juice Wells. They're freaking 500 miles an hour. They're explosive. Track meet type deal. Vandy's a little bit more physical as far as the run game goes. They're a lot more explosive in the run game with the option stuff and the motions and the pre-snap stuff. And they present a different look than Ole Miss does. And those are the kind of things. And when you really want to kind of point to a game to kind of see how Kentucky would fare or would kind of try to play that, watch the South Carolina game. Because with Lenora Sellers, they try, that's a similar built team. Like Robbie Ashford and Lenora Sellers, they're more runners, they're more run oriented. They don't push the ball down the field a ton. They can. And they will at times, but they if South Carolina could go 70% run, they would. And a lot of it is quarterback run. And though that kind of offense is really kind of what gives Kentucky fits. And they obviously did because they won 35-10 or 38-10 or whatever the final was. So if you want to watch a game that would kind of give you an idea of how they'll play Vandy, watch the South Carolina game. That game is probably more telling because South Carolina's built more similarly to Vanderbilt as far as philosophy and what they have at quarterback than Georgia and Ole Miss, right? Ole Miss is not running Jackson Dart in an option game. They're not going to do it. Carson Beck is not an option runner. Not really much of a runner at all. I mean, he can if he scrambles. He's able to get the yards he needs, but he's not a threat. He's not somebody who's going to boom. He's going to shoot out 60 yards. Pavia is that. Lenore Sellers and Robbie Ashford are that as a tandem in Columbia. So that, just kind of an early look there. I think you're going to be able to get some things going in the run game because of the dynamic pieces that you have in the backfield. And so that game is going to be interesting if your offense, because Kentucky's offense is not going to present hardly any problems. I don't think they're good. They're serviceable. They can move a little bit and they can do enough, but their defense is really what provides them those opportunities. And they've been struggling all year to cash in on those, which is why they've been having these low-scoring games. But if Vandy's offense can get going even just a little bit, it'll keep that defense out on the field a little bit. Even if they're not scoring a ton of points, it'll wear that defense down because Vandy's just a pound at you kind of a run style. They'll get tired of. They'll wear down because their offense. If you can frustrate their offense and make them 3 and out, and really kind of get after them and prevent them from making long drives, that's going to benefit you. And that's how you kind of take down Kentucky, which the perception of Kentucky is a lot better now than it was, a month ago when they got shellacked by South Carolina. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. We learned a lot this weekend from just being on a bye week and watching Bama, watching Kentucky, and watching some of these teams play around the league. But that's going to do it for us. We're going to break more Bama down as we go throughout the week. So we're going to have fun with that a little bit. And of course, we're going to make some picks for the weekend, and we'll get out of here. But until tomorrow, anchor down, behave yourselves. Peace.